My parents replaced me with their golden child and still want me to pay their bills. Damn it. They used to call me their miracle. Now, I'm just their walking credit card. The snow had already begun melting along the edges of the sidewalk when I stepped out of the Uber, suitcase in one hand, gift bag in the other. The front door of the house still had the same squeaky hinge, same welcome mat. But when I stepped inside, the warmth I remembered from winter breaks in college was nowhere to be found. Valerie looked up from the couch. Not Mom. Not anymore. "You're early," she said, adjusting the throw on her lap. Chloe didn't even glance up from her phone. I used to hand her my report card like it was a golden ticket. She'd grip it like it meant she had done something right. Now she barely looked at me in the eye. "I got you both something from New York," I offered, placing the bag on the coffee table. Neither of them reached for it. Dinner was a bland casserole, something Chloe liked. Stephen sat at the head of the table like a silent painting, nodding occasionally. The clink of forks was the only real conversation. Then came the moment I dreaded. "Chloe needs to pay her tuition early," Valerie said between bites. "Have you withdrawn the money yet?" The words hit like sleet. Not a question. A reminder. Chloe gave a soft, sheepish smile. "It's just the exam stress, you know?" I blinked. Once. Twice. I wasn't told the amount. "Well, I assumed you'd just handle it," Valerie said. "You always do." She turned back to Chloe. "Her professor says she's brilliant, top of her cohort." That made two miracles in the family. One who no longer shined and one still being polished. I nodded silently and picked up my plate. "I'll do the dishes." The kitchen smelled faintly of soap and lemon. When I turned on the faucet, something caught my eye in the stack of mail on the counter. A crumpled electricity bill. Past due. Addressed to me. I had moved out years ago, but my name still paid for their light. From the dining room, Valerie's voice floated in. "If I don't help, Chloe will have to stop studying." She meant if you don't help. I wiped my hands, picked up my purse, pulled out my wallet. For a moment, my fingers hovered over the credit card I'd used too many times for their emergencies. But this time, something stopped me. Instead of the card, I pulled out my phone. I opened my wallet, but instead of taking out my card, I grabbed my phone and looked up housing near Cambridge. No roommates. They replaced me emotionally, but not financially. The city was still half asleep when I stepped off the train. My boots made that familiar squeak on the linoleum as I entered my apartment. Small, but mine. It smelled faintly of cinnamon from the candle I had forgotten to blow out before heading to Boston. At least one part of me still felt warm. I dropped my bag by the door, walked straight to my desk, and opened my laptop. Bills. Spreadsheets. My life measured in columns and formulas. Rent due on the 3rd. Utilities. Gym. Then the long list titled Family Transfers. And just as I began reviewing the December figures, my phone rang. Valerie. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Hey." Her voice was brisk. "Chloe's laptop is acting up. The fan's so loud she can't even hear her lectures. Can you help me get her a new one before the semester starts?" There was no, "How was your trip?" No, "Thanks for dinner." Just another invoice disguised as family. "I'll check," I said. "That's great, honey. I knew I could count on you." She hung up before I could finish my sigh. I sat there, staring at the open spreadsheet, my cursor blinking next to the cell that said January, Chloe, tuition. A line below, a note from last year read, "Promise to cover Chloe's loan through graduation. Keep her stress-free." Back when I thought I was the big sister who made life better. Back when being a role model meant more than being a fund. I minimized the sheet, opened a new tab, typed in, "Refinance options for student loan debt," then closed it just as quickly. The door creaked. Ava leaned against the frame, still in her oversized hoodie, holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. "I let myself in," she said softly, handing one to me. "You look like your soul got hit by a truck." I tried to smile, but it broke halfway. "I feel like If I don't send money, I'm being a bad son. Ava raised an eyebrow. Son? I blinked, caught off guard. I meant daughter. Sorry, just that's how it feels. Like I'm not their daughter unless I'm paying bills. She sat beside me, placed her mug down, and looked at the spreadsheet. You've got formulas for everything, except your own piece. I gave a bitter laugh. It's easier to calculate sacrifice than resentment. She leaned in. Madison, what if being good is exactly what they're using against you? The silence wrapped around us like a thick blanket. I stared at the screen, my cursor still blinking. Waiting. I opened a new browser tab and typed, Open new savings account, personal emergency fund. But halfway through entering my information, I stopped. Instead, I typed, Financial advisor near me, independent. I open an account, then stop and move on to schedule an independent financial advisor. If love comes with invoices, maybe I should have asked for a refund. The video call blinked to life at exactly 6 p.m. Their living room looked the same. Brown leather couch, a framed photo of Chloe at her high school graduation, the outdated lamp with the crooked shade. Valerie appeared first, holding her phone at an awkward upward angle that caught too much of her neck. Stephen sat beside her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Chloe popped up in the corner, smiling like it was just another casual check-in. Hi, sweetheart, Valerie chirped, too bright, too rehearsed. Hi, I said flatly. Chloe's tuition notice came today, she started, not even pretending to warm me up with small talk. The payment deadline's in 2 weeks. I'll forward it to you after the call. I took a breath and let it out slowly. I'm not paying it. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was razor sharp. Even Stephen blinked. I've been reviewing my finances, I continued, voice steady. I'm starting to prioritize my own future. Retirement, savings. I can't keep covering everything anymore. Valerie leaned forward, her face filling the screen. We're not asking you to give us the moon, Madison. Just help your sister. Like you've always done. She's an adult, Mom. So am I. Valerie's mouth twisted. Biological sisters are so calculating now, huh? Is that what we've raised? Stephen looked away. Chloe's voice came in, soft but heavy. It's okay, Mom. Maybe she just doesn't care anymore. That hit harder than anything else. I clenched my jaw. My hands trembled slightly as I steadied the phone. Or maybe I just started caring about myself. Valerie's lips tightened into a thin, disapproving line. So that's it? I didn't answer. I ended the call. 10 minutes later, the notification buzzed on my screen. A text from Valerie. You've changed. Don't come home this summer. If I stop paying, will they stop pretending I matter? The snow outside kept falling, quiet and unbothered, like it had no idea the world inside my apartment had gone still. I stared at my phone again. No missed calls, no new messages. The lock screen was blank, like I'd somehow unsubscribed from my own family without realizing it. I didn't respond to Valerie's last message. For the first time, I'd read her words, felt the sting, and didn't reply. Instead, I let the silence settle in. It pressed on me, unfamiliar and cold. The kettle whistled. I poured hot water over a tea bag, then sat at my desk watching the steam rise, hoping it would clear my head the way it cleared the glass. The knock came soft and hesitant. Hey, Ava said, peeking in with her usual scarf and a half-eaten bagel in hand. Still alive? Barely, I muttered. She stepped in, looked at the untouched breakfast on my desk. You're spiraling. I'm just thinking. Sure, and I just eat sugar when I'm stressed. Look. She pulled up a chair. You didn't do anything wrong. You said no. That's not a crime. But it feels like one, I whispered. It's like, if I'm not paying, then who am I to them? She frowned. Madison, sometimes silence is the best response, especially when the noise they give you is manipulation. I didn't answer. Instead, I scrolled through my inbox. Nothing. No follow-up from Valerie, no guilt-baiting text from Chloe, just nothing. A ping. It was a group invite from Ethan, my colleague from the tech floor. Dinner tonight with a few coworkers. I hovered over the RSVP button, then closed it. I wasn't ready to be around people. Not yet. By evening, I was wrapped in a blanket, half watching a documentary I wasn't following. As I stood to clear my teacup, I noticed something on the front door, taped right under the peephole. A sticky note. "You're not invisible." Just paused. I froze. Ethan. I don't know how long I stared at it, but the tears came faster than I could blink them away. Not because I was sad, but because, for the first time, someone saw me without asking for anything. I sat down at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote slowly. January 28th. I didn't send any money, and I'm still breathing. Turns out, emotional debt doesn't show up on your credit score, but it still ruins you. The office was minimalist, all glass and quiet hums from the radiator beneath the floor-to-ceiling windows. Camila Delgado, my new financial advisor, was not the warm and fuzzy type. Her nails were sharp, her blazer sharper, and her gaze even more so. "I've reviewed your past 24 months," she said, clicking open a spreadsheet that looked more like an autopsy than a budget. "Are you ready?" "As I'll ever be," I muttered. She rotated the screen slightly toward me. Family-related transfers, expenses, unrecouped debts, bills in your name. Everything you either paid for or covered out of guilt or habit. The numbers hit like punches. Grocery reimbursements, surprise tuition, laptop, utilities, even a birthday dinner where I wasn't invited but somehow paid the bill. 42%, she said. That's the percentage of your post-tax income you funneled into your family in the last 2 years. My throat closed. Camilla didn't look away. That's not support. That's extraction. By the time I left her office, the sun was already fading. I didn't remember the walk to the cafe where Ava was waiting, but I must have looked shell-shocked because she stood the second I stepped in. "What happened?" she asked, sliding me a chai latte. I sat down slowly. "They've taken almost half of everything I've earned." Ava blinked. "Are you serious?" I nodded. Camilla called it bleeding. Ava swore under her breath. "You've been carrying a whole family like it's your student loan." I opened my phone, hands shaking slightly, logged into my banking app. I created a new savings account, gave it a name, Clean Start. Then I changed the password to my primary account. Something no one else would ever guess. It felt like changing the locks to a house that never protected me. Back at home, I stared at the blank screen of my phone. For a moment, I felt free, light. Then it lit up. Incoming call. Valerie. I watched it ring once, twice, 3 times. And for the first time in my life, I didn't pick up. ChatGPT Janoi. No ho ja jiao tao toi janoi ko. Toi ko, the jiao tao. Bantan, janoi kong. The community center smelled faintly of cinnamon and recycled air. Folding chairs circled a single lamp in the middle of the room, casting long shadows that made the room feel smaller, more intimate. 10 of us, strangers with different faces but the same heaviness behind our eyes, sat clutching notebooks. Laura, our facilitator, smiled softly as she introduced herself. I used to think boundaries were walls. Now I know they're doors you get to open and close. You decide. The session began with silence, then stories, one by one. A woman named Janelle talked about maxing out credit cards to pay for her boyfriend's business idea, only to find out he had another girlfriend and a second phone. Her voice trembled, but her spine stayed straight. I didn't speak. I just listened. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a freak. I felt seen. When it was time for the journaling exercise, Laura handed out blank paper. "Write a letter," she said, "to your older self. Say the things you wish you'd known earlier." I stared at the empty page. My pen hovered, uncertain, then finally moved. You thought you were saving them, but no one ever saved you. I didn't expect the tears. They slipped out one by one, like they were sneaking past all my defenses. Later, during the sharing circle, Laura looked at me. You don't have to read your letter, but would you like to share anything? My throat tightened, but then I spoke. I was never the daughter, I said, voice low but certain. I was the donor. No one laughed. No one scoffed. Someone whispered, "Same." At the end of the session, Laura approached as I zipped my coat. You have a story, she said gently. Maybe someday you'll tell it. I didn't say anything, but something inside me, small and quiet, nodded. They never expected me to count the cost, but I did, and now I know. The soft hum of the heater was the only sound in my apartment, besides the quiet clatter of keys under my fingers. The glow of my laptop screen lit the room like a stage light. On that stage, receipts, emails, screenshots, and transaction logs, years of evidence lined up like little betrayals. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Anger was loud. What I felt now was colder, calmer, the kind of silence that meant I'd stopped asking for explanations. I sifted through my inbox, tracing the timeline. Valerie's requests came like clockwork. Every time Chloe needed something. Tuition, books, a new internship wardrobe. But then there were the extras. Grocery lists that never included Chloe's name, yet were for her. A phone bill she apparently couldn't afford, though she posted spa pictures the next day. Every payment had a smile attached. Every transaction, a guilt trip. Ava leaned against my doorway, sipping a lukewarm matcha. You look like you're solving a murder. I am, I said without looking up. Death by 1,000 invoices. She stepped closer, eyes scanning the spreadsheet. You did all this yourself? Yeah. I flipped the screen to show her. Payments, from 2019 to last month, categorized. Her brow furrowed. You realize she always says it's for Chloe, right? Even when it's not. I nodded. That's the pattern. Valerie never asks for herself. It's always through Chloe. Ava placed the cup down, slower now. You could send this to the IRS, or a lawyer. Or I could keep it, I said, for the right time. She didn't argue, just rested her hand briefly on my shoulder. Proud of you. I opened the printer tray, fed the document through. Pages spilled out, years of quiet exploitation, now in black and white. I clipped them into a folder and wrote, in thick red ink across the cover, Family, Unpaid Debts. Before turning off the light, I checked my phone. One new message. Ethan. Still on for the startup pitch tomorrow? I stared at the text, smiled, and typed back, Yes. Let's build something no one can drain. If they could drain me, I could reinvest in myself. The co-working space smelled like dry erase markers and espresso, intensity and caffeine, bottled in a second-floor loft above Boylston Street. The walls were covered in whiteboards, most filled with abandoned ideas or startup jargon. But our corner? It was alive. Ava tossed a marker from one hand to the other. Okay, imagine this. A notification system that flags guilt-based language in messages. I added, and a spending tracker specifically categorized by emotional triggers, like how often you pay after someone says, "You're the only one I can count on." Ethan nodded from behind his laptop, already sketching wireframes. What if the app had a virtual assistant, something empathetic, not robotic? A check-in bot that doesn't just ask about your balance, but your boundaries. We were onto something. I could feel it in my fingertips. The idea of transparent futures wasn't about revenge. It was about reflection, recognizing the trap, then building the ladder out. I hesitated, then looked at Ethan. Can I tell you something? He glanced up. Sure. I told him everything. Not all at once, but enough. The tuition payments, the silence after I stopped, the diary entry on January 28th. He didn't flinch, just listened. When I was done, Ava leaned forward. It's not about budgeting. It's about boundaries. We all paused, the sentence hanging there like a revelation. I like that, Ethan murmured. The tagline writes itself. He spun his laptop toward me. On the screen was a clean interface mock-up centered around a calming blue orb. Beneath it, Echo, the app's virtual assistant. Simple, grounded, trustworthy. You're not escaping, Ethan said quietly, eyes meeting mine. You're engineering your escape. We spent the rest of the evening polishing our pitch, submitting the application for early seed funding just before midnight. The three of us sat back in our chairs, exhausted but exhilarated. 2 days later, I opened my inbox. Subject: Invitation to speak, Women in Tech Spring Forum. My heart skipped. It had begun. Even shadows know how to beg, if you teach them long enough. The rehearsal room was empty, except for the echo of my voice bouncing off white walls and the faint scratch of Ethan's pen as he jotted notes. I stood at the center, clutching the remote like a lifeline, running through my lines for the spring forum pitch. You are not your balance sheet. You are not a withdrawal button. You are... My phone buzzed. Chloe. I froze. Chloe. Hey, Mom's not well. She wants to talk. The words blinked back at me like bait. Ethan looked up. I didn't answer right away. I stepped outside, the winter air pinching my skin as I dialed. Valerie picked up on the second ring. Hello? Her voice was soft. Too soft. Hi. I didn't think you'd call. She sounded tired, measured. I've been under a lot of stress lately. The doctor says my heart, well, it's not great. They're keeping an eye on me. Silence. She sighed. You know hospitals these days. They charge for everything, even air. There it was, the ask, subtle, laced in concern, wrapped in guilt. Mom, I said carefully, what are you trying to say? She hesitated. It's just, there's a bill. I wouldn't ask, but... I ended the call. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked back into the room where Ethan sat, eyes quietly waiting. How do you say no? I asked him, without being cruel. He stood up. Cruel, he said, is when they trained you to think boundaries are violence. I stared at my phone for a long moment, thumb hovering. Then I typed. Madison, I'm sorry you're unwell, but I'm not your insurance. And hit send. She was their son, but even the sun can burn you blind. I wasn't expecting the knock. It was soft, hesitant, like the person on the other side didn't really want to be there. When I opened the door, Chloe stood in the hallway, her coat too thin for the February cold, her eyes puffy but perfectly lined, like she'd been crying carefully. Hey, she said. I stepped aside without speaking. She entered like she had when we were kids, like she was always allowed, even when she wasn't invited. Her voice trembled. I came to say sorry. For Mom. For all of it. I watched her move around the living room, taking in the muted light, the papers on my desk, the file folder I hadn't hidden fast enough. You're working late? She murmured, eyes on the spreadsheet titled Unpaid Debts. I usually do, I replied. Keeps the silence from getting too loud. She sat on the edge of my couch, fiddling with the strap of her purse. I know things have been strange, but Mom's just under pressure. She doesn't mean to push you away. I sat across from her. Have you ever had to choose between freedom and loyalty? She blinked. What? I repeated it, slower this time. Her lip quivered. I've never had to choose anything, she whispered. They always decide for me. The words hung heavy between us. She leaned forward, hands pressed together. They don't let me be a bad person. Not really. Because they need me to be good. To look good. To make them feel good. Her voice cracked. Even my boyfriend. They check his LinkedIn before they let me date him. I didn't move. I didn't speak. She wiped her cheek roughly, frustrated with herself. Sometimes I wonder if I even know who I am without them. I nodded slowly. Sometimes I wonder something too. She looked up. If they don't need me anymore, will I still exist? The truth is easy to bury, until you learn to speak it in public. The stage lights hit harder than I expected, not because they were bright, but because they made me visible. For years, I'd lived in the shadows of other people's expectations, ducking under the weight of duty and silence. But here I was now, centered, mic clipped, heartbeat in my ears louder than the soft murmurs of the crowd. Ava gave me a quick thumbs up from the front row, flanked by Ethan, who was scribbling something on a tablet. I didn't look too long. I needed to stay still, stay sharp. I stepped forward. They taught me to give. I began, my voice amplified, clear. Our app teaches people to stop bleeding. A few heads tilted. Phones came up. The judges, 5 of them, leaned slightly forward. I clicked to the first slide. Transparent Futures isn't just a budgeting tool. It's a boundary tool, I said. It watches for patterns. Recurring requests disguised as emergencies, emotional coercion masquerading as love. Our AI assistant, Echo, doesn't just manage numbers, it monitors manipulation. I kept going. Every word I said peeled something off me. A layer, a scar, a mask. I showed graphs, testimonies, beta user feedback. But the real pitch wasn't in the data. It was in me. Jasmine Kane, a sleek woman in her 40s with a reputation for backing radical ideas, held up her hand. What proof do you have this works? I paused. The clicker rested warm in my palm. Then I looked her square in the eyes. You're looking at her. Silence. A full second. And then, applause. It started in the middle row. Spread outward, then upward, loud, real, surging over the room like heat from a sun I had long forgotten I deserved. When I stepped off stage, my legs didn't shake. Ava was crying. Ethan smiled like he'd seen it all coming. Later, Jasmine caught me outside the conference room, voice low and measured. If you're ready for scale, she said, we should talk. If money was love, then I'd been robbed for years. The house looked the same. White siding, rusted mailbox. The tree out front still bowed like it was apologizing for something. I hadn't been back since the text that said not to come, but I wasn't here to ask permission. I was here to return the bill. Valerie opened the door, her lipstick fresh, her voice rehearsed. Look who came home. Your daughter is here. Stephen glanced up from the kitchen table, unmoved. Chloe stood in the hallway, tense. Aunt Linda, planted at the far end of the couch, smiled awkwardly. I stepped inside and didn't sit. I didn't come to join dinner, I said. I came to return this. I placed the folder on the table. Family, unpaid debts. Every penny, I said. Every year, every silence counts. Valerie's smile vanished like it had never been real. She flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. You kept records? She whispered. I had to. No one else did. Stephen's eyes darkened. Chloe looked down. Valerie's voice sharpened. This is cruel, Madison. Aunt Linda leaned forward. It's not cruelty, it's accountability. For a moment, no one breathed. I met my mother's gaze. If you loved me, I said, you wouldn't have charged me to exist. The words landed like thunder. Valerie sat back, speechless for once. My hands didn't tremble. Not anymore. Then Stephen stood, slow and deliberate. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. If you don't come back, he said flatly, then this inheritance, this house, your name on the deed, it's off the table. Chloe gasped. Aunt Linda muttered something under her breath. I didn't flinch. I just looked at the paper in his hand, then at the woman who'd once called me her miracle. And I smiled. Because even threats have an expiration date. They always smile for the camera. But you can't Photoshop fear. The Carter living room was unusually quiet for a Sunday. The sun filtered through sheer curtains, painting soft shadows across polished marble floors. On the coffee table, surrounded by untouched espresso cups and yesterday's glossy magazines, sat a plain white envelope stamped IRS in bold black ink. Douglas Carter opened it with the confidence of a man used to dodging consequences. That confidence didn't last long. His eyes moved left to right. Once, twice, and then his face lost its practiced calm. "They're requesting 5 years of spending reconciliation," he muttered. Victoria looked up from her phone, confused. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Douglas snapped, "someone sent them something. Internal documents, bank transfers, property logs." Victoria's hand trembled as she scrolled through her influencer page. Her latest post, a curated brunch shot captioned, "Success is inherited, not taught," suddenly felt radioactive. She opened her settings, began deleting. Back at her apartment, Madison closed her laptop. A message blinked across her screen from an old college friend now working at the IRS. "Hey, off the record, that file you once mentioned? It's doing rounds. Your name's clean. But theirs? Not so much." She leaned back, exhaling slowly. "I don't need to hit," she murmured. They collapsed on their own. Across town, in a sunlit dining room filled with perfume and pearls, Victoria sat at a rich women's luncheon. The conversation had shifted. Subtle glances, hesitations. Someone whispered about discrepancies in donations. Another mentioned audit rumors. Victoria stood up mid-salad. "Excuse me," she muttered. Her phone buzzed with a new notification. Tag removed from post by user. At the Carter house, Chloe sat curled on the stairs, half listening. Douglas paced. "Who is crazy enough to send internal documents to the IRS?" he barked. Chloe looked up. Her eyes searched her mother's face, no longer admiring, no longer certain. For the first time, doubt crept in. That night, in a sealed envelope slipped under Jasmine Kane's office door, an anonymous letter read, "Before you invest, know what they buried. They thought loyalty could be bought. They forgot I kept the receipts." Jasmine Kane's office was the kind of place that didn't echo. Everything was softened, curated, and quiet. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the Boston skyline in full winter shimmer. The table between us was glass, but the folder Jasmine slid across it was heavy with weight. 300,000 seed, she said, her tone measured, elegant. "For initial scale, 3 engineers, marketing. You'll be live in 3 months." I exhaled slowly, fingertips brushing the edge of the document. I didn't need to read the first page. I already had. It was page 7 that mattered. Clause 12B. Founders must not be involved in any active family legal proceedings, nor publicly comment on personal history that may affect the brand's neutrality. They didn't want the mess. "Just business protection," Jasmine added. "Clean narrative sells better." I nodded. Professional. Calm. Later, at our corner booth in the coffee shop, Ava and Ethan leaned in as I read it aloud. "She wants your story, but without your scars?" Ava frowned. "She wants safety," I said. "For her money." Ethan tilted his head. "What happens if you say no?" "I don't lose the money," I answered. "I lose the silence." Ava reached across the table. "Then lose it." The next morning, I walked back into Jasmine's office. No hesitation this time. I took a pen, drew a line through Clause 12B, and under it wrote by hand, "Transparency includes origin stories." Jasmine said nothing at first, just watched me. Then, she smiled. She re-signed the contract, without changes. No edits, no disclaimers, no silence. I didn't flip the table. I just pulled out the chair they chained me to. The table gleamed under soft candlelight. 12 seats, crisp napkins, expensive silence. The waiters floated in and out like ghosts, but nothing on the menu could cleanse what we were really about to digest. Valerie raised her glass, smile practiced. "To family," she said, to unity after some misunderstandings. I didn't raise mine. Chloe, seated across from me, fiddled with her fork. Stephen looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Aunt Linda, alert as ever, just watched. You know, Valerie said lightly, turning to the relatives on her right, Madison's finally doing well. Got herself a tech thing. It's amazing how far you can go with a little family support. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Chloe stood, her chair scraped back. She didn't get here because of support, she said. She got here despite it. The air froze. Valerie blinked. Excuse me? Chloe's voice didn't shake. Since Madison was 18, she's been paying bills that weren't hers. Credit cards in my name, rent in yours. She was your safety net, and you cut holes in it every year. You're confused, Valerie snapped. She's a delusional girl who... Linda interrupted. We have the file, Valerie. And Chloe didn't send it. Chloe's eyes flicked left. For a second, I thought toward me. But then I saw it. At the end of the table. A woman with a leather notebook and sharp eyes. Not family. Not friend. Press Valerie followed the gaze. Her face drained. You brought a reporter here? She asked for truth, Chloe said. And I'm done protecting lies. The woman stood quietly, slid a small white card toward me across the table. I'd like your voice, she said, for our series on financial abuse. Madison, call me. Stephen's hand slammed the table. You want the whole family in the newspaper? I didn't flinch. I smiled. Only those who have something to hide. They buried me with their silence. I resurrected with headlines. The Sunday morning light hit differently. I sat on my couch, legs tucked under a throw blanket, the warm buzz of Ava's text waking me up before the coffee did. Front page. We're on it. The headline stared back at me in clean black font. When love becomes a ledger, one woman's fight against family financial abuse. Underneath, a photo of me. Not smiling, not posed. Just real. I met Ava and Chloe at our usual coffee shop. The place buzzed with conversations, the clink of cups, but our corner was quiet. 3 copies of the article lay between us. Chloe traced her fingers across the page. They taught me to give, never to ask, the pull quote read. Ava exhaled slowly. That line hit. Chloe nodded. It was always true. We just stopped hearing it. At the Carter house, chaos brewed. Valerie slammed the paper down. How dare she, after everything we've done? Stephen didn't respond. He never did. Valerie grabbed her phone. Dialed. No answer. Dialed again. When I finally picked up, my voice was calm. You have 5 minutes, I said. You need to take that article down. Do you hear me? This is our family. I looked across at Chloe. She met my eyes, then took the phone from me. No, Chloe said. It's not our family if we only survive by staying silent. There was a pause. Valerie's breath faltered on the other end. Then I spoke. If you're ashamed, it's because you finally looked in the mirror. I ended the call. Later that evening, an email buzzed in. From Jasmine Kane. Subject, NBC proposal body. They want to license your story. We need to talk contracts. I closed the laptop, heart steady. They used to write my life in whispers. Now it was on the front page. Even abusers were once apprentices. The attic door creaked like it hadn't been touched in years. Dust curled into the beam of my flashlight, and Chloe followed behind me, arms wrapped tight around herself. It's all still here, she whispered. She never threw anything away. The air was thick with forgotten decades. I traced my fingers along a rusted filing cabinet in the corner. On top, a faded photo. Valerie, maybe 16, smiling too hard. Beside it, a small box tied with string. Chloe crouched beside me. She always said this place gave her migraines. I opened the box. Letters, dozens of them. Yellowed at the edges, each one addressed from a woman named Celeste. my grandmother. A daughter is a long-term investment, one letter read. Treat her like a fragile asset and she'll never return enough. Chloe swallowed. She used to quote her all the time. I thought she was just dramatic. A torn diary page fluttered free from the stack. I will never let my daughter be weak, Valerie had written, even if I have to suffocate her strength to sharpen it. The ink was smudged in places. Tear stains, maybe. Rage? Regret? She wasn't born cruel, I said quietly. She was trained. Chloe picked up another photo. Valerie on her wedding day, her eyes locked on Stephen's, but her body angled away. She told me once she had to choose security over love. I thought it was metaphorical. I found the final envelope, thick parchment, never opened. Valerie had written my name on it in careful script, then scratched it out and wrote, "No one." The silence pressed down. Outside, the glow of the bar lights blinked through the attic window. Ava and Ethan waited below. But up here, we were untangling a deeper inheritance. I handed Chloe the letter. We are not them, unless we repeat what they dare not face. She held it like it burned. Chloe looked at me, her voice trembling but sure. I will say everything. Live. We used to whisper truths. Now we amplify them. The lights were hotter than I expected. I sat under them with my palms resting on the armrest, fingers clenched beneath the surface. Chloe was beside me, her breath measured but quick. The studio audience murmured in anticipation as the red on-air light blinked on. Nina Ray smiled from across the stage. Polished, poised, the kind of presence that steadied any storm. Tonight, she began, we speak not with bitterness but with bravery. Our guests, Madison Carter and her sister Chloe. The camera turned toward us. My throat tightened. But then Chloe placed her hand gently on mine. I nodded. When did you realize, Nina asked me, that what your family called love came with conditions? I took a breath. When I stopped paying and they stopped pretending I mattered. The audience hushed. No gasps, just the heavy stillness of recognition. Nina turned to Chloe. And you? Chloe blinked once, then said, I was the beloved child, but the price was silence. She reached into her bag, pulling out our grandmother's letter. This is what our mother was raised on. A daughter is a long-term investment. We were both expenses, just categorized differently. There were a few audible inhales in the room. Nina let the silence linger, then leaned forward. Is there anything you'd like to say to the next generation? I looked straight into the camera. Don't confuse silence with strength. Don't inherit what your heart cannot carry. A long beat. Then applause erupted. Not the kind that fills time, but the kind that fills lungs. A wave of validation, like the exhale of people who had waited years to hear themselves echoed. Backstage after the show, Chloe leaned against the wall, eyes rimmed in red but shining. I reached for my phone and checked the feed. Unchain the Heart's thousands of shares, tens of thousands of comments, stories from strangers, confessions from cousins, apologies from parents. But no call from Valerie. Instead, a single voicemail blinked on my screen. I played it on speaker. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what I've created. Then the line cut off. I looked at Chloe. She didn't ask us to take it down. No, she said. She finally listened. They pulled the strings for so long, they forgot I had hands too. Rain tapped lightly against the windows as I stepped into the house I once called home. The once polished floors looked dull, the chandelier above dimmer than memory allowed. Chloe stood behind me, arms crossed, silent. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was enough. Valerie sat in her favorite chair, the floral print faded now, like everything else in this room. The air smelled like old perfume and storm-damp silence. I'm not sorry, she said without lifting her eyes. But you won. Satisfied? I didn't move. I didn't win, I replied. I just stopped losing. She looked up, something unreadable flickering in her face. Anger? Resignation? I couldn't tell anymore. She stood, crossed the space between us slowly, and handed me an envelope. I didn't have to open it to know what it was. It's the will, she said. You're in, Chloe's not. The silence between us thickened. I stared at the paper. Then, without ceremony, I tore it in half. Then again, and again. Let the pieces flutter like ash onto the floor. Valerie's mouth tightened. You really think any of this makes you free? I don't think, I said quietly. I know. She stepped back as if burned by the calm. No more guilt, no more bills, no more loyalty laced with transactions. Valerie sank slowly into the couch, exhaling like it hurt. I tried to make you strong, she whispered. Number, you tried to make me obedient, I answered. You succeeded, for a while. Outside, the rain picked up, a soft thunder murmuring its approval. I turned toward the door. Chloe followed, still silent. Just as I placed my hand on the doorknob, Valerie spoke again, softer this time. You think freedom is light, but freedom is heavy. I paused, nodded once. Yes, but at least it's mine. They said I was a mistake. Turns out I was a mirror. The room wasn't large, just rows of chairs lined up between dusty shelves of biographies and battered paperbacks. The city library community room smelled of coffee, floor wax, and something else I couldn't quite name. Maybe anticipation. Or healing. I stood at the small podium, light catching the edge of the microphone. The sign behind me read, Annual Education Event, Stories That Shape Us. Chloe sat in the front row, not centered like she used to be in family photos, but just to the side. Her hands folded gently in her lap, her gaze steady. For the first time, she looked at peace simply being present. I took a breath. I was once told I was too dramatic, too selfish, too cold, that love meant giving, and giving, and giving, until you had nothing left, not even your name. I paused. The young faces in front of me, students, mostly girls, watched without blinking. I used to believe that if you weren't chosen, you were broken. But sometimes you're not broken. You're just a mirror reflecting what others don't want to see. From the side, I caught Ethan giving a small nod. Lena leaned forward in her seat. Ava couldn't make it today, but her voice still echoed in my bones. I shared what it meant to be invisible, what it meant to stay silent because speaking felt like betrayal, and what it meant to choose yourself when no one else would. At the end of the session, a girl in the front row raised her hand. Are you still mad at them? She asked. Her voice was small but honest. I smiled. I'm not mad at them anymore. I just don't let them rewrite me. There was a silence in the room that didn't feel empty. It felt full, of stories not yet told, of questions still forming, of pens waiting to be picked up. A woman from the organizers approached me quietly, handing over a badge. We'd be honored if you'd join Transparent Futures as our public advocate. I accepted it with a quiet thank you, heart light but steady. As I stepped away from the podium, the camera panned behind me, onto the words on the event backdrop. Your story matters. You just need to reclaim the pen. And for the first time in a very long time, I knew exactly how I wanted mine to end. They once called her a burden, a mistake, a means to someone else's end. But in the end, she stood on a stage they never built, holding a story they tried to erase. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But when it does, it echoes louder than silence ever could. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Type 1 if you resonate with this story.